Some assets generate revenue, some assets generate influence, and some assets exist so powerful people never feel watched. Jeffrey Epstein owned an island, but what he really owned was privacy. There are places in the world where rules feel softer, where laws become suggestions, where distance itself acts as insulation. Private islands are sold as paradise, but to the ultra-wealthy, they serve another purpose entirely. They are environments where friction disappears. No neighbors, no cameras, no accidental witnesses. Jeffrey Epstein's Little St. James Island wasn't just land surrounded by water. It was an asset designed to remove accountability. And to understand why that matters, you have to stop thinking like a criminal investigator and start thinking like a system. From a traditional business perspective, Epstein's Island made no sense. It wasn't a resort. It wasn't developed for resale. It didn't generate visible income. It cost money. Maintenance, security, staff, transportation. For most investors, that's a liability. But Epstein wasn't optimizing for cash flow. He was optimizing for conditions. In business, assets don't just generate money, they generate leverage. Office buildings create control over labor. Media companies shape narratives. Banks control liquidity. Epstein's Island controlled environment. An environment controls behavior. At a certain level of wealth, money stops being scarce. Privacy does not. For billionaires, politicians, royalty, financiers, and executives, privacy isn't about comfort, it's about survival. Public visibility increases risk, reputational risk, legal risk, political risk. The higher you climb, the more exposure costs. Epstein's Island offered something rare: total separation. No paparazzi boats drifting too close. No journalists just happening to be nearby. No public infrastructure demanding records. The island didn't ask questions. It didn't log names. It didn't testify. That silence had value. Private islands have long been used by elites for reasons that have nothing to do with leisure. Historically, they've functioned as informal diplomatic spaces, negotiation zones outside official records, social environments without oversight. When conversations don't happen in offices, they don't appear in calendars. When meetings don't happen on the mainland, jurisdiction becomes complicated. Distance doesn't just create peace, it creates ambiguity. And ambiguity is power. Epstein didn't market his island, he curated it. Access was selective. Being invited meant something. And when access is scarce, it becomes currency. Elite environments don't need explicit transactions. They operate on implication. Invitation creates obligation. Return visits create familiarity. Familiarity reduces caution. The island wasn't about entertainment. It was about context. People behave differently when they believe they're invisible. Epstein's finances have been widely questioned. Public reporting has long noted the lack of a clear, transparent operating business that explained his wealth. But the island wasn't hidden, it was openly owned. And that's important, because hidden assets invite scrutiny. Visible assets normalize presence. The island existed in plain sight, but outside everyday relevance. A paradox. People knew about it. Few questioned why it existed. Legitimacy doesn't require explanation when status fills the gap. One of the most unsettling elements of the Epstein case is how long obvious questions went unasked. Not by the public, by institutions. Banks flagged Epstein's accounts, journalists raised concerns, law enforcement investigated. Yet socially, Epstein remained embedded in elite circles. Because legitimacy spreads socially, not rationally. If someone appears accepted by powerful people, others assume the vetting has already happened. Responsibility dissolves into assumption. An assumption is how systems fail quietly. In traditional business, risk is managed through contracts, insurance, and compliance. Epstein's Island did something different. It relocated risk, geographically, legally, psychologically. Events that occurred offshore became harder to investigate, harder to document, harder to prosecute. Not impossible, just expensive, and systems often choose the cheapest path. Jurisdiction isn't just legal geography, it's leverage. Different laws, different enforcement priorities, different political incentives. Offshore locations complicate accountability by default. That complexity benefits whoever can afford it. The island didn't exist outside the law. It existed where law moves slower. And speed matters. Silence is not passive. Silence is a decision. Institutions constantly calculate the cost of action, the cost of exposure, the cost of doing nothing. For years, the cost of confronting Epstein was higher than the cost of ignoring him. That calculation wasn't made by one person. It was distributed across banks, lawyers, media organizations, and regulators. Distributed responsibility feels like no responsibility. It's tempting to ask why Epstein's island wasn't seized, shut down, or scrutinized earlier. But systems don't act on morality. They act on incentives. The island didn't disrupt markets. It didn't threaten institutions. It didn't embarrass the right people until it did. Scandals don't grow linearly. They grow until silence becomes more expensive than exposure. Eventually, Epstein's island crossed a threshold. What once provided insulation became a focal point. Media attention intensified. Public pressure mounted. Legal scrutiny followed. The asset flipped. What once absorbed risk began to concentrate it. That's when systems respond, not early, not preventively, but reactively. When Jeffrey Epstein died in 2019, many expected closure, but systems don't close easily. The island remained, unsolved, unexplained, legally entangled. Assets tied to power don't dissolve when individuals disappear. They linger. Because the island wasn't just Epstein's, it was part of a larger structure that valued distance, discretion, and deniability. Epstein Island wasn't the crime, it was the infrastructure. Infrastructure reveals priorities, and this infrastructure existed to reduce visibility, complicate accountability, normalize silence that tells us something uncomfortable. Not about Epstein alone, but about the systems that allowed the asset to function. There is an unspoken business model at the highest levels of power. It's not written in pitch decks. It doesn't appear in earnings calls. It operates through social access, information asymmetry, environmental control. Privacy is monetized. Silence is rewarded. Distance is leveraged. Epstein didn't invent this model, he exploited it. After Epstein, promises were made, reforms discussed, investigations launched, but the fundamentals remained. Private islands still exist. Offshore jurisdictions still operate. Elite networks still self-police, because dismantling the infrastructure would require confronting incentives that benefit too many people. And systems rarely vote against themselves. The most important question isn't what happened on Epstein's island. It's why such an asset was allowed to function so long without challenge. Why privacy was treated as neutral. Why distance was treated as harmless. Why legitimacy replaced skepticism. Those conditions didn't die with Epstein, they're still operational. Epstein Island didn't generate profit, it generated protection. And in certain systems, protection is the most valuable asset of all. Some assets make money, some assets make power invisible. And the most dangerous ones never appear on balance sheets.